It started with a mess. Not a big one, just a few files out of place. A coffee cup left on the edge of a sleek glass table. But to the elite board members sitting in their perfectly tailored suits, that tiny bit of disorder was enough to wrinkle their noses. One of them, a woman with diamond earrings and a voice that could cut through steel, leaned over and said it, "Clean this up." She didn't say it kindly. She said it like a command, like she was used to the world jumping when she spoke. Across the table sat Rachel, calm, composed, and sharp as ever. She wasn't just the founder of the tech startup these board members had invested in. She was the reason they were even in the room. The company had just closed a deal worth $50 million. It was her code, her vision, her leadership. But at that moment, none of it mattered to the snobby elites. All they saw was someone they thought should fall in line. Someone they believed owed them obedience. What they didn't know, what they hadn't bothered to learn, was that Rachel had built her company from nothing. No silver spoon, no Ivy League handshakes. Just long nights, second-hand laptops, and a relentless drive to change the world. She had invited these investors into her dream to grow it, not to control it. But now, their true colors were showing. And this wasn't the first time. Subtle jabs, offhand comments, attempts to steer her company in directions she never agreed to. Rachel didn't speak right away. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every person who thought they could belittle her. Then she reached for her phone, calmly opened an app, and with one tap, canceled the deal. $50 million, gone in a second. Silence fell. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. And that's when the real story began. For a full 10 seconds, no one said a word. The boardroom that had moments ago been filled with quiet arrogance was now frozen in disbelief. One of the men leaned forward, trying to make sense of what just happened. "Rachel," he said slowly, "you didn't just cancel the funding, did you?" She didn't answer. She just placed her phone on the table, folded her hands, and looked him in the eye. That silence told them everything. But how did it come to this? Just 6 months earlier, Rachel had been hailed as one of the brightest rising stars in the tech industry. Her startup, Nuvance, was changing the way small businesses used AI, making smart tools simple, affordable, and human-friendly. She wasn't building flashy robots or chasing hype. She was solving real problems, quietly gaining millions of users. The buzz caught the attention of big investors, and soon the offers started pouring in. $50 million was the number they agreed on. But with that money came strings, ones she didn't see at first. The board started showing up unannounced. Meetings turned into lectures. Every small decision suddenly needed approval. And then came the remarks about how she dressed, how she should act more executive, how the office space should reflect more professionalism. A professionalism, in their eyes, looked a lot like control. The final straw wasn't just the comment, "Clean this up." It was the tone. The reminder that, despite building the entire company, she was still expected to play a lesser role in the story she wrote. Back in the boardroom, phones started buzzing. News was spreading. Investors were already talking. Canceling a $50 million deal would make headlines, but what no one knew yet was why. Rachel wasn't reckless. She had a plan. And the people in that room were about to realize just how much they had underestimated her. The moment Rachel walked out of the boardroom, everything changed. She didn't slam the door. She didn't look back. But her calm exit carried more weight than any argument could. Outside, her assistant Maya rushed to catch up. "Did you really just pull the plug?" she whispered, wide-eyed. Rachel nodded, but her face didn't show panic. It showed purpose. Behind the scenes, the fallout was immediate. News of the canceled $50 million funding deal hit the tech blogs. Within hours, some called it bold. Others called it career suicide. Investors started dialing. Emails flooded in. Everyone wanted answers, but Rachel stayed silent for now. She knew the narrative was already being shaped by people who had never built a line of code, never sat with customers, never worked until 3 a.m. to fix a product bug before launch. People who thought control came from a bank account, not a vision. Inside Nuvance, her team was split. Some were scared. Others admired her guts. The truth was, not everyone agreed with her decision, but they all knew something had been brewing. The investors weren't just writing checks. They were slowly rewriting everything that made the company special. Ideas got watered down. Product updates were delayed for branding alignment. Even hiring had turned political. Rachel had tried to work with them, to compromise, but each meeting felt like giving away another piece of what she built. Meanwhile, one of the board members, Thomas Langford, wasn't taking the hit quietly. He had plans for Nuvance's plans that didn't include Rachel staying in charge. Behind closed doors, he began making calls of his own. Whisper campaigns, legal angles. He wasn't just angry. He was embarrassed. And powerful people don't like being embarrassed in public, especially not by someone they assumed would just smile and obey. Rachel knew this wasn't over. In fact, it was just starting. And somewhere between the press calls and silent stares in her own office, she realized walking away from $50 million wasn't the risky move. Staying quiet would have been docked by the next morning. Nuvance was trending, but not for the reasons Rachel had hoped. Headlines were spinning. Founder walks from $50 million deal, reckless or revolutionary. And one that hit harder than the rest. Too emotional to lead. That one came straight from a quote given anonymously by someone inside the investor group. Rachel didn't need to guess who it had. Thomas Langford written all over it. Tension inside the company grew with every passing hour. Some senior employees began fielding offers from recruiters who smelled instability. Slack channels buzzed with nervous chatter. Clients emailed asking for reassurance. Rachel tried to keep the team calm, but the pressure was real. She wasn't just fighting a bad deal anymore. She was fighting for the soul of the company she built and her place in it. Then came the subpoena. Delivered to her office in a plain envelope, the legal language was cold but clear. Thomas and 2 other board members were alleging breach of contract. According to them, Rachel didn't have the right to cancel the funding without a board vote. It wasn't just about money. Now it was personal and strategic. If they could paint her as impulsive, unfit, or unprofessional, they could push for her removal as CEO. But Rachel had been preparing for this, quietly and carefully. What Thomas didn't know was that she had already started building alternative partnerships, investors who believed in her vision without trying to control it. Some of them had seen what happened in that boardroom and reached out, offering silent support. But none of those offers were final. Not yet. And until they were, Rachel was walking a razor-thin line. To make matters worse, a leaked email appeared. Online, an internal memo from Thomas, mocking Rachel's leadership and calling Nuvance a rescue project. The timing was brutal. Public trust wavered. Employees began questioning everything. And Rachel, sitting alone in her office late at night, stared at a whiteboard filled with names, numbers, and timelines. One wrong move, and everything could collapse. But she wasn't giving in. Not now. Not after everything. The fight wasn't over. In fact, the moment that would decide everything was just around the corner. Just when Rachel thought she had mapped out every possible angle. The second twist hit, and it came from inside her own company. Late one evening, Maya burst into her office, holding a printout with shaking hands. "You need to see this," she said, her voice tight. It was an internal server log. Someone had accessed confidential files, including Rachel's pitch decks, private investor emails, and Unreleased product prototypes. Not from the outside, from a company login. From someone she trusted. Rachel stared at the screen, heart pounding. The user ID was masked, but Maya had traced the IP to a remote login used during offers. It was no amateur move, whoever did. This knew what they were doing. And worse, the files had already been downloaded. Someone was preparing to leak, or, even worse, replicate her work. The betrayal cut deeper than anything Thomas had thrown at her. Hours later, she got the confirmation. A new startup had just been registered, barely a week old, with a suspiciously similar name, product description, and design language. The founder, a former Nuvance developer who had left quietly just 2 months earlier. But the real shock: Thomas Langford was already listed as an advisor. The picture snapped into place. Thomas wasn't just trying to remove Rachel. He was trying to replace her, using her own ideas, her own tech, and someone from her own team. It was a full-blown, co-silent, strategic, and perfectly timed to take advantage of the chaos. If the prototype launched first, if the media turned against her, even harder, it could spell the end of